Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a world far removed from ours, yet somehow familiar in its rhythms and rumbles. The year is 1327. The sun is setting over a muddy footpath in a small English village you've never heard of and that no one today remembers. Smoke rises in pale threads from crooked chimneys. A pig snores somewhere behind a fence made of sticks and hope. The fields are quiet now, scraped bare by autumn, and the last cart has creaked back from the barley stubble. You're walking well, trudging down a dirt lane in borrowed shoes that don't quite fit, and your stomach's making low theatrical noises. Dinner is close, but not close if you know what I mean. Nothing is ever fast here. You pass the blacksmith's hut where the only warmth comes from the forge and the scent of hot iron clings to the air like worry. Just past the well and the duck pond that smells like feet, there it is. Your home. A timber-framed, moss-roofed hut slumped like an old man in the corner of the common. The wooden door squeals on its hinge and you duck inside. If you forget to duck, the beam doesn't forget you. The hearth is already glowing just enough to cast flickering shadows across packed earth floors and wool-stuffed straw mats. It smells like damp rushes, smoke, and something faintly hopeful, onions maybe. Your mother, or maybe your cousin, depending on who's home, nods at you with a grunt. Dinner's started. Not cooking exactly, more like coaxing. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the local time in the comments. It's oddly fun seeing who's dozing off in Denmark and who's still awake in Detroit. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You settle onto a three-legged stool near the hearth. The fire here isn't just a source of warmth. It's the stove, the light, the entertainment, the pest repellent, and the deodorant all rolled into one. Hanging over it is a sooty iron pot. Inside, something vaguely brown, faintly lumpy, and wholly promising. There's a wooden spoon poking out of it like a ship's mast. Outside, the twilight deepens. Chickens murmur themselves to sleep. Somewhere, a sheep sneezes. You reach for the worn cloth that hangs by the door. It's not so much a napkin as a communal towel for hands, bowls, and occasionally goats. There's no table yet, and the stool you're on has a sliver with your name on it. Still, there's peace here. Slowness. A rhythm you can already feel, syncing with your breath. Tomorrow you'll rise with the first light gut, the fire for warmth, and chase down breakfast like a problem you can't quite solve. But for now, dinner is the only puzzle. And the pieces, fire water, bread root, and time are starting to come together. The hearth crackles lazily and you lean a little closer, not just for the warmth, but for the smell. Beneath the smoke and soot, there's something earthy, something edible. It's not dinner yet, though. That'll take time. You watch as a bundle of firewood, some dry, some wishfully so is tossed onto the embers. The fire flares with a wheeze, and sparks skitter across the stones like mischievous fairies. This is where everything starts. The hearth. It is quite literally the beating heart of the home. If it goes out, everything else unravels. Meals, comfort, even warmth for the newborn goat in the corner. You glance over your shoulder. Sure enough, there it is, curled in a woven basket, fast asleep, dreaming of grass it's never tasted. You grab the iron trivet and place it just above the coals. It's blackened from years of service and faintly warm to the touch, even before it's set down. A soot-blackened hook swings from the ceiling beam above the pot, will hang there eventually once there's something worth hanging. For now, it rests off to the side, half full of yesterday's ambitions. You poke at it with the wooden spoon. Still soggy, still edible. Probably. There's no chimney, not really. The smoke curls up into the rafters and finds its way out through holes that double as ventilation and bird entrances. You blink a few times as your eyes adjust. It's not dramatic, just a slow, stinging haze that everyone pretends not to notice. Your cousin says it keeps the demons away. You're pretty sure it just keeps your lungs exercised. Someone is trying to start a second fire in a corner, this one for boiling water. The trick is patience and a lot of blowing. A lot. You kneel beside the kindling and huff at it with the kind of focused rage usually reserved for lice. Eventually it catches, and a small curl of flame appears like a secret revealed. Victory. You place a squat little pot over the flame and hear the tick of heat against metal. Water, when you can find it, has to be boiled. Everyone agrees on that. Except when they don't. The village well is 2 fields over and tastes faintly of tin and tragedy. If you're lucky, someone fetched it this morning in a wooden pail that now sits by the door lid askew. You fill the pot with it anyway, ignoring the leaf and 2 bugs floating inside. One of the bugs is still alive. You give it a moment. Now it's not. As the pot begins to warm, someone tosses in a few stray bits of chopped leeks. The scent is optimistic. It's not soup yet, but it's something, a start. You sit back again, rubbing your hands near the flames, wondering not for the first time how people in castles live. Probably with food that isn't also an experiment. But this is life for most. Dinner isn't plated, it's ladled. There's no course structure, no appetizers, no dainty desserts in crystal bowls. There's the pot. And if you're lucky, there's still some bread to go with it. Evenings like this stretch out slowly. There's not much else to do after all. Maybe a story, maybe a song, maybe a complaint about the neighbor's cow stepping on your laundry again. Historians still argue whether peasants led miserable, brutish lives or found comfort in shared simplicity. You lean toward the latter, especially now with the fire warming your toes and the scent of boiling something teasing your nose. The hearth spits once more. The goat bleats in its sleep. You lean back on your stool arms folded and smile at the thought that yes, this might take another hour, but it's going to taste like survival. The pot begins to bubble. Not enthusiastically. This is no cauldron of magic, but with the low, determined effort of something that knows it'll eventually get there. You crouch beside it, watching as tiny flecks rise to the surface. It's mostly water still, but now at least it's hot water. Someone rummages through a reed basket and hands you a small handful of herbs wrapped in an old cloth. Lovage parsley may be a hint of something you hope is thyme. It smells slightly bitter, but it's meant to hide the flavor of everything else, so in it goes. Stirring with the spoon now feels ceremonial, like you're conducting an orchestra with only one musician and a badly tuned lute. Once long ago, someone added too much mugwort, and the whole stew turned a strange shade of purple. No one talks about that dinner anymore. You're more careful now, pinching in the leaves like a cautious apothecary. You can't afford to ruin it. After all, this isn't just your dinner. It's tomorrow's breakfast, and if portioned right, a snack for someone's midday toil. There's no fridge, no ice, no preservatives unless you count salt smoke or prayer. So everything must be boiled, eaten, or stored with care. The pot becomes a diary of the week. Monday's cabbage becomes Wednesday's broth. Friday's ale-soaked crust ends up as a Sunday surprise. And all of it gets reheated. You fetch more water from the bucket, wincing as your sleeve brushes the firestone edge. You're careful not to stir too hard once someone knocked the whole pot into the flames. That story's still told around the village with mock solemnity, as if it were a noble tragedy. The night the dinner died. Now it's time for the ritual of checking the pot. You lean in, sniffing like a skeptical dog. It's hot, vaguely vegetal, and most importantly, nothing's floating that shouldn't be. You grab a thin sliver of bark and test the liquid. Not bad. Not good. But not bad. The water is safe, or at least it's trying to be. In 1327, boiling water wasn't just culinary, it was survival. Raw water from rivers or shallow wells might carry more than just the taste of mud. Parasites, bacteria, mystery illnesses that modern science hasn't fully named. So everything is boiled. Again and again. You once joked that the only thing more boiled than the stew was your patience. You place the lid on with a thump. Not too tight. Steam needs its exit strategy. Across the room, a small child is gnawing on the end of a wooden spoon. Teeth first. A few others are half dozing against the wall, lulled by the repetitive crackle of fire and the gentle gurgle of potential dinner. It's a soundscape that could send even the most hardened monk to sleep. Someone mutters that the stew needs body. That's code for bread barley, or if the saints are smiling, meat. You sigh and go to fetch the grain sack. It's been rationed to dust. A few barley kernels, some oat flakes, maybe even crushed rye if you're lucky. Into the pot they go. No measuring, just instinct. The more you add, the less water there is per mouthful. A practical kind of magic. Historians still argue whether the medieval peasant diet was tragic or tenacious. You suspect both. It lacked variety, sure, but it got the job done. And once your stomach gets used to cabbage 5 nights a week, anything else is practically exotic. As the pot simmers again, you sit back and stretch your spine bones, clicking gently like dry twigs. The fire's warmth wraps around you like a woolen blanket. You don't need a clock to know it'll be another 20 minutes. The stew needs time not just to cook, but to become food, to remember what flavor feels like. Dinner here is never fast, but it's always earned. You stand and brush the ash from your knees. Dinner might not be ready yet, but that doesn't mean there's nothing to do. The hearth may be the heart, but the stomach has a rhythm all its own, and right now it's asking about bread. The loaf, if it can still be called, that sits wrapped in a cloth on a high shelf. It's 2 days old and starting to harden, which means it's finally sturdy enough to double as a spoon, a plate, and in a pinch, a mild weapon. You set it on the table, a thick plank balanced on upturned barrels, and knock on it twice. It answers with a dull thud, promising, "This is maslin bread, a mix of wheat and rye, often with barley millet or whatever the miller happened to sweep up that day. It's coarse, dark, and slightly sour. The kind of bread that reminds your teeth who's in charge. But it fills the belly. And more importantly, it stretches the stew. You slice it slowly, not because you're savoring it, but because the knife is terrible. Dull as a monk's love life. The crust cracks. Crumbs scatter. The inside's still soft in that dense, chewy way that feels like chewing a promise someone made too early. This bread didn't come from your oven. Most likely it came from the communal bakehouse. You remember rising before dawn to shape the dough market with your family's symbol. A leaf, scratch a thumbprint, a broken line, and leave it with the others on the floured boards. The baker doesn't ask names anymore. He just knows, and if he doesn't, he guesses. One time you came home with someone else's loaf. It was lighter, fluffier, slightly sweet. A miracle. You didn't mention it. The bakehouse isn't free, of course. There's a small fee or a slice of the bread. Some lords charge the right to use the oven at all baking as taxation. Historians still debate whether this was enforcement or cooperation. You call it another reason to marry someone who knows how to build a fire. You remember when flour was hard to come by after a late frost. The villagers tried baking with crushed beans and acorns. The result was optimistic. The goats wouldn't even eat it, but it made for good doorstops. Tonight, though, the loaf is real, honest. You pass slices to everyone around. No one says thanks. It's not ungratefulness, it's habit. Bread is expected, like dirt under your nails or the smoke in your sleeves. You tear your piece into chunks and place it by your bowl. One piece will soak in the stew. The other you'll chew on while pretending it's cheese. It's not, but if you close your eyes and really try. As you sit back down, someone mentions that the old baker's daughter is getting married next week. She's a good kneader. Someone mutters, then snickers. You roll your eyes. The jokes haven't changed in 100 years, but you smile anyway. It's part of dinner, like the bread, like the fire. The stew bubbles again, louder this time. It's closer now, closer to food. You lean forward, one hand holding bread, the other resting near the spoon. Everything about this is slow. Everything takes time. But when the smell deepens, when the leeks, oats, and broth start to blend, you feel it. That quiet anticipation. Not for something luxurious, not for flavor that dazzles, but for something warm, filling, and shared. The bread won't win any contests, but it'll hold the stew. And tonight that's more than enough. You lift the lid again. Steam rises like a lazy ghost, curling toward the rafters and drifting through the room with a faint scent of earth, onion, and something unplaceable. Not bad, not quite good either. But it smells like food, and that's enough to wake the baby goat in the corner. It bleats once, then immediately regrets the effort. Tonight's stew is a humble masterpiece. The third or maybe fourth generation of a dish called pottage. If stew had a less ambitious cousin who never moved out of the village, it would be this. A thick blend of whatever vegetables were available, simmered slowly and endlessly. Think of it less as a recipe and more as a lifestyle. You give it a stir. Bits of barley roll across the surface. A lonely sliver of carrot bobs up, makes eye contact, and sinks again. The leeks have softened into oblivion, thickening the broth with their sacrifice. A shred of last week's turnip clings to the edge of the spoon like it's trying to escape. No chance. Pottage is dependable. It's not exciting, but it shows up day after day, bowl after bowl. Its ingredients change with the season, the mood of the household, and the contents of the garden or the roadside hedge. Sometimes it's thin. Sometimes it's so thick you could stand a spoon in it, like a flag. Today's batch leans hearty. Barley, onion, garlic, chives, and a few questionable beans. Someone swore we're still fine. It's not vegetarian by design, it's just that meat is a guest star, not a series regular. Historians still argue whether pottage was monotonous or comforting. You lean toward comforting. There's something meditative about a dish that never ends, that stretches across meals, days, even generations. Your great-grandmother's version probably tasted just like this, or just as bland. You pass the spoon around. Everyone takes a quick sample, blowing gently, sipping cautiously, chewing slowly. No one says anything. A few nods. One person coughs. Approval. You adjust the seasoning. Not that seasoning means much. A pinch more salt if you have it. A scrap of dried sage from the string by the window. Your aunt once claimed to have cooked a pottage so flavorful, a friar proposed marriage after 3 bites. She never confirmed whether she said yes, only that she kept the spoon. You sit back and let the pot do its thing. There's no rush. It's not like you've got a second entree waiting in the wings. No one here's flipping through cookbooks. The recipe lives in your hands, your nose, and the collective memory of people who've been stretching root vegetables since William the Conqueror was a toddler. Someone brings a bowl from the shelf, a wooden one worn smooth by years of meals and the occasional use as a hat. You ladle out the first portion. It lands with a gentle plop. The bread goes in next, soaking up broth like a sponge with dreams. The youngest kid takes the first bite. His face is unreadable for a long moment. Then he nods dramatically. Better than yesterday, he declares, and the room relaxes. Whether it's true or not, doesn't matter. You serve yourself next. The bowl's warm in your hands. The steam fogs your nose. The taste, savory, soft, and entirely earned. It tastes like what it is. Everything you had made into everything you need. Outside, the light is gone. The hearth now holds the only flicker. The pot simmers. The stew thickens, and the night draws close. Dinner has arrived. Not loudly, but it's here. You slide your spoon through the thick, drowsy swirl of pottage and pull up a slice of turnip. It's overcooked in the best possible way, so soft it barely holds together. You blow on it gently and bite in. It tastes of earth and effort, of cold mornings and warm fires, of something that could survive winter even when you feel like you won't. Root vegetables make up the backbone of peasant dinners. You don't think about it most nights, but tonight you notice. Carrots, parsnips, onions, leeks, and if you're lucky, a sad little beet. They grow beneath the ground, quiet and hidden a little, like your hope that someone else will do the dishes. Turnips are the most common, not because anyone loves them, but because turnips will grow in dirt that nothing else likes. They're the stubborn grandmothers of the vegetable world. Boil them long enough, and they surrender their edge, becoming sweetish and strangely meaty. Some folks roast them on feast days, pretending they're goose. That lie doesn't hold up, but everyone pretends anyway. Tonight's turnips are joined by leeks, which you pulled yourself from the frozen patch near the chicken shed. You remember the struggle. Fingers numb, roots stubborn, the satisfying pop when it finally gave way. You cleaned them by the stream and carried them back in your tunic hem, shivering and proud. The stew has absorbed them now, their mild oniony flavor melting into the broth. It's not grand, but it's layered, soft, honest. You spot a few slivers of carrot, rare and sweet. Not the neat orange supermarket kind, but stumpy, pale things with hair-thin roots still clinging on. They're like edible treasure, only more edible and less treasure. The child across from you fishes one out and holds it aloft like it's a prize. Everyone leans in. Trade you for some bread? Someone whispers. He refuses solemnly. There's a rhythm to eating like this. No rushing, no reaching. Just spoon bite, chew, think. Spoon bite chew joke. The stew cools slowly and no one speaks too much. The heat does most of the talking now. You pass the bread down again. It's gone hard around the edges, but that's perfect for soaking. Someone tries to butter it with leftover broth. It's an effort in optimism and everyone respects it. Historians still debate whether peasants knew about nutrition or just stumbled into survival. You think the answer is both. They didn't say balanced diet. They said don't die of scurvy this winter. And somehow that's what this stew does. It keeps you going. You think back to a time when there were no vegetables late spring, early summer, the hungry gap. That stretch when last year's stores are gone and this year's crops aren't ready. It's a lean time. Meals turn pale. Broth gets thin. People turn to nettles, wild greens, whatever can be foraged without a curse. But tonight you've got roots. A whole pot of them. You ladle another scoop. A turnip lands with a satisfying splat. You chew slowly, feeling the warmth settle in your belly like a small, sleepy miracle. Outside, the wind has picked up, brushing the walls with a gentle hiss. The stew's heat clings to your skin, to your clothes, to your soul. Dinner may be humble, but it is here, and it is enough. You swirl your spoon one more time around the bowl, scraping up the last bits of barley clinging to the edges. It's a little saltier now. Somehow stew always concentrates near the bottom. The broth is thicker too thanks to the oats and the lingering starch from everything boiled beyond recognition. Still something's missing. A little flavor, a little spark. You glance toward the shelf above the hearth. A woven pouch hangs there tied shut with a bit of fraying twine. You untie it carefully like it might whisper if you listen closely. Inside, herbs. Not many and not exotic. Just dried parsley, a bit of thyme, maybe even a shred of mint that's turned brittle and dark. You crumble a bit into your palm. It smells like last summer, faint, grassy, sharp. Into the pot it goes. You stir again, hopeful. No dramatic transformation, but something lifts. A faint brightness, a tinge of memory. Flavor is precious in 1327. Salt, for instance, is a gift and a currency. You trade for it when you can eggs. Cloth scraps a half-day's work mending a fence. But it's never abundant. Tonight, there's just a little in the bottom of a clay jar and you tip a pinch in with reverence. Not enough to taste clearly, but enough to feel you tried. There's no pepper. That's for merchants and bishops. But you do have garlic. Sort of. Wild garlic grows near the stream in spring and someone thought ahead. A few bulbs hang braided by the window, drying into pale paper. You peel one clove and crush it with the flat side of the knife, letting its bold aroma slice through the room. That goes in too. You once heard of a stew that included cloves and cinnamon. Someone's cousin returned from a pilgrimage and described it with awe, like he'd tasted a dream. You've never had cloves. But once during a feast at the manor, you snuck a bite of something sweet and spicy that made your eyes widen involuntarily. You still think about it. Tonight there's none of that. But there's lovage, a bitter green with a peppery bite that wakes up tired pottage. You only use a little. It's strong, almost medicinal. Some say it cures melancholy. You're not sure about that, but it certainly makes dinner taste like someone cared. Someone across the fire adds a handful of chives. They're a little rubbery, harvested late, but still pungent. A few jokes are made about fancy folk and gourmet stew. You all laugh. The kind of laugh that doesn't lift you out of the world, but nestles you deeper into it. Historians still argue whether peasants valued taste or simply endured it. But as you watch the last spoonful swirl with garlic herbs and just a dash of smug satisfaction, you suspect they understood flavor in a different way, when it was earned, when it was saved, when it was small, but real. The stew is done now, not because the clock says so. There is no clock, but because everyone agrees with their noses and their instincts. The pot is lowered slightly to let it rest. Steam curls upward like a signal. You take a deep breath. That scent. It's barley, turnip, garlic, herbs, and memory. And it smells like home. The stew simmers with a low, contented burble as though it knows it's finally worth the attention. The smell of pork, faint but unmistakable, has wrapped itself around the room, curling into corners, sneaking into everyone's sleeves and hair. You breathe it in, and for a moment, even the straw mattress in the corner seems softer. But now comes the part most visitors find difficult to understand. The drink. You rise and walk toward the back wall where a heavy clay jug sits atop a crooked shelf. You lift it carefully, more out of respect than necessity. Inside is ale. Not the bubbly golden stuff with hops and fizz, but something darker, murkier, and alive, in a way modern drinks wouldn't dare to be. This is small ale, low in alcohol, high in calories, and safer than water. Most of the time. The well, after all, is a dicey affair. You've drunk from it before, but never with confidence. The stream is cleaner sometimes. But even then, you've heard of people growing pale, thin, and cough-prone after too much river tea. No one wants a repeat of the winter of bellies, when half the village regretted a single bucket. So you pour the ale, thick, warm, and vaguely bread-scented. It lands in the cup with a dull splash. No bubbles, no clink. Just liquid. Nourishment. One sip, and your tongue confirms what your nose already guessed. It's slightly sour, faintly yeasty, and surprisingly comforting. The cup is passed around as always. It's communal unless someone's sick. Even then, they just get a different cup. Not a clean one, just different. Someone jokes that Tom's ale tastes like turnips. He shrugs. That's because I brew it next to the turnips. Historians still argue whether small ale was genuinely nutritious or just slightly less deadly than everything else. You lean toward nutritious. After all, it's water grain and thyme boiled, fermented and poured with pride. There are worse things. The kids each take a cautious sip and make their usual exaggerated faces. The adults pretend they're not watching. You take another drink. It's not quenching exactly, but it's warm, filling, and just bitter enough to keep things interesting. Sometimes on feast days, someone finds wine, usually a half bottle from a monastery cart. You've tried it once. It tasted like boiled raisins and regret. Everyone said it was fancy. Tonight, it's ale and pottage and a fire that's still crackling in slow rhythm. You look around at the faces lit by flame. There's soot on noses, crumbs on chins, and a visible quiet settling in. Dinner here isn't served on silver or paired with cutlery. There are no matching plates, no wine pairings, no courses. Just one pot, one jug, one slow communal pause. You top off the ale for whoever wants it, and set the jug down near the fire where it can stay warm. Not that anyone's worried about chill between the stew and the drink, your insides are practically steaming. As you return to your bowl, the scent of pork still lingering, you think to yourself, not for the first time, that you could get used to this. Not the cold, not the aches, but the togetherness. The flavor earned one root at a time. The bowl in your hands is lighter now, its contents scooped, sipped, and savored into memory. Around you, others are reaching that same lull in the meal, the moment when the hunger fades and the slowness creeps in. Cheeks flush from firelight, fingers slick with broth, shoulders rounded in the warmth of shared silence. But don't get too cozy. There's one final ritual, clearing up, or at least pretending to. You rise, stretch slowly, and walk to the side bench where a chipped wooden bucket holds cold water and a tattered rag. It's not soap and sponge, but it's something. You tip the bowl sideways, letting the last of the stew's ghost run out with a reluctant glop. Then you dip the rag, scrub, rinse. Repeat. 3 bowls in your hands are stiff from cold, but the scent of leek lingers on your knuckles. Someone else tosses the empty pot's dregs into the ash pit. Another folds the cloths used for bread into the corner. Nothing is wasted, and nothing is really clean either. Just clean enough. Dinner may be finished, but the tools must survive. Bowls are inspected for cracks. Wooden spoons wiped gently, and the iron pot, your loyal soot-blackened cauldron, is hung back over the fire, empty but steaming. You glance over at the hearthstone where a rat scuttles by. There's no shriek, no panic, just a resigned sigh. The rat pauses, sniffs a bit of bread crust near the bench, and darts off again. A few of you exchange glances. Someone chuckles. It's not the first visit tonight, and certainly not the last. Pest control in 1327 is mostly spiritual. Cats are rare and precious. Dogs chase rats if they feel like it. Otherwise, you just learn to eat faster, or higher, or under a hood. Historians still argue whether the presence of vermin meant households were unhygienic or just typical for the age. You already know the answer. If food exists, so do rats. If warmth exists, so do fleas. If crumbs fall, there is always someone watching. You brush off the bench, trying not to think about how many paws have skittered over it. The baby goat bleats again, this time louder, and someone tosses it a chunk of crust. It misses but tries anyway, determined and unbothered. You grin. Even the animals here understand the value of leftovers. Someone lights a small tallow candle. Its flame flickers weakly against the glow of the hearth, but it adds just enough light to see faces clearly now. Soot-streaked, sleep-heavy, belly-warmed faces. Yours probably looks the same. You gather the empty bowls, stack them carefully, and return to the fire. A few more logs are added, not for cooking now, just for comfort. The room settles into that sweet post-meal lull where time softens at the edges. There is no applause, no dessert, no digestive cocktails. Just scraped bowls, shared glances, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from something warm, something real, and something earned. Dinner's over, and yet, somehow you're still holding it inside. You lean back on the bench, your bowl now clean enough to return to its place beside the fire. Your fingers are warm again. Your stomach, while not bursting, has stopped making passive-aggressive noises. And just as you begin to feel the pleasant hum of contentment settle over the room, scritch, scritch, you hear it again. From the far wall near the woodpile comes that telltale shuffle, the sound of tiny claws on old timber. You glance at the others. Yep, they heard it too. You sigh and pick up the small broom, more twig than bristle, and head over without fanfare. The rat appears bold and unimpressed, as if it has every right to be here. Which frankly it kind of does. You two have seen a lot of each other lately. It's a fat one, belly low, fur patchy. You give a half-hearted sweep, more ceremony than threat. It darts away, not frightened, just inconvenienced. Vanishes behind the water bucket with the practiced grace of a nightly guest. You return to your seat and shrug. Everyone does. It's just part of dinner, or the after-dinner show depending on your mood. There are stories, of course, about clever rats stealing cheese straight off shelves, about one particularly bold mouse who nested in the thatch and only came down for dried beans. Someone in the village swears they once trained a ferret to guard their pantry. That ferret was never seen again, nor was the pantry. The truth is, you coexist. A few scrapes, a few traps, a few whispered threats to the saints. But unless a rat gets into the barley bin or walks across your face mid-slumber, it's just one more member of the household. Historians still debate how much medieval peasants feared vermin. Some argue they were nuisances. Others say they were omens. You think they were just inevitable. You hear another scritch, but fainter this time. The fire pops. The candle flickers. You let the rat have its moment. After all, you got your dinner. Why shouldn't it? You grab the last chunk of bread from the bench, hard as a brick, and set it near the back wall. A truce offering. If it keeps the rat out of the good barley, it's worth the cost. Then you return to the warmth of the hearth, brushing crumbs off your tunic, and feeling the quiet settle back over the room like a worn wool blanket. Dinner is never over quickly in this house, but the company, even the four-legged kind, somehow makes it bearable. The stew pot is empty now, wiped clean with the last of the bread and good intentions. The candle has burned lower, casting a golden puddle of light across the dirt floor, and the fire is no longer crackling, just whispering. As the warmth slows the room into silence, someone pipes up with a quiet, "Remember, last Michaelmas." That's all it takes. You smile, because everyone remembers that one. It was the feast to end all feasts, or at least that's how it felt. A fat goose, a small wheel of cheese that didn't smell too adventurous. Even a pie, yes, a real one with flaky crust and questionable bird bits inside. Someone even brought honey. No one asked where it came from. Michaelmas falls at the end of September, just when the last of the harvest is stored. Debts are tallied and everyone is either relieved or mildly doomed. But that year was special. You'd helped carry bundles of barley from the fields all week. Your fingers were raw, your back a complaint, but the manner had been generous or distracted. More food made it to the village than usual. There was cider, real cider, sharp and bubbly and probably not supposed to explode like that. You remember the music, A man with a lute who only knew 3 songs but played them 8 different ways. People danced on the grass. Someone fell into the fire and claimed they did it on purpose. That night, you had second helpings. Second helpings. Feast days are rare, but they live on like glowing embers. Stories passed around like cider cups. You catch someone across the room smiling at the same memory. A shared glance. No words needed. And it's not just Michaelmas. There was also that one Saint's Day, when a traveling friar brought dried figs. You'd never tasted anything like it. Sweet and chewy. You ate 3? You swore you could hear angels. Historians still argue whether peasants celebrated with joy or obligation, whether feast days were a relief or a reminder. You think it's both. They were breaks in the rhythm, pauses in the hunger, a chance to pretend for one day that fullness wasn't borrowed. You look around now and know this evening won't be told with the same sparkle. No figs, no cheese, no pies or cider. But maybe it'll be remembered as that night Tom brought pork or the stew that actually tasted like something. That's how stories grow. You stretch your legs under the bench, your toes finally warming. Someone begins humming a low tune that's older than the walls around you. It's not a performance, just habit. The song of post-dinner stillness. And you think not for the first time that you wouldn't mind a little festival again. Not for the food, but for the togetherness. The excuse to look at your life and say, just for a night, this is enough. Maybe more than enough. Your back finds the rough edge of the wall cool and oddly comforting. The candle wobbles in its holder as someone walks past, casting brief shadows across the floor like slow dancers. A quiet lull has settled in bellies not full, but content. Bowls, scraped hands, wiped spoons stacked like tired soldiers. But there's still a question lingering unspoken but expected. Something sweet. You glance toward the shelf near the window where a bundle of dried apples hangs from a string. It's not much, just a handful of leathery slices shriveled and darkened from their weeks by the hearth. You pluck one down, breaking off a piece and chewing slowly. It's chewy like boot leather, but sweeter than anything else in the house. Concentrated. Honest. You can almost taste the sun it once knew. That's dessert in 1327. If you're lucky, there might be honey. Not likely tonight. Bees are hard to charm and harder to rob without incident. You once saw a man try to take honey from a wild hive without gloves. He ran across 3 fields and fell into a ditch. He did not get the honey. You pass a few apple slices around. They're accepted with quiet nods as though this were a royal delicacy. Someone breaks a piece of old walnut from a pouch hidden in their cloak and shares it. Now that's luxury, a walnut and dried apple on the same night. A feast of fragments. Historians still debate whether peasants developed a sweet tooth the way nobles did. Some say sugar never touched common tongues. Others insist on ancient candies made from boiled honey and mashed herbs. You think sweetness, when it appeared, was sacred? It wasn't expected, it was encountered. Occasionally, someone finds a root called Alexander's that tastes faintly like licorice. They boil it with milk when there's milk and call it pudding. But that's a name as generous as calling a rat a roommate. Tonight, it's apples and firelight with a bit of nut if you're lucky. And truly, you are. You finish your last bite, slowly letting the sugars melt into your tongue, eyes half closed. No urgency here. No guilt either. Just the soft understanding that this is enough. Even the goat seems satisfied now, curled tight beside the bench, twitching in some oat-filled dream. A kid across the room whispers that tomorrow they'll try to barter for plums. No one believes it, but everyone smiles anyway. You wipe your fingers on the edge of your tunic and lean back into the fire's warm breath. Dinner is gone, but its kindness lingers. And that little bite of sweetness, that was hope disguised as fruit. The candle flickers lower, casting gold into the creases of the hut. Shadows lean longer now, and even the fire seems to whisper instead of crackle. Someone reaches for a poker and shifts the coals just enough to keep the warmth breathing. The night isn't cold yet, but it's thinking about it. You stack the bowls in a shallow wooden crate. The goat lets out one last stubborn sigh and settles deeper into its hay. Nearby, someone gently hums a lullaby you've heard since you were small. Something about a robin, a harvest moon, and a barley loaf that never burned. No one remembers all the words, but that's never mattered. You light a second stub of tallow and place it near the far corner. The flickering flames now duel gently across the room, bathing the walls in quiet amber. The family begins to shift into their sleeping positions, mothers with children curled beneath cloaks, older folk nestled into worn straw mats. There are no beds here, just floor firelight and routine. And you stay near the hearth just a little longer, watching the last curls of steam escape from the pot. The stew is done. The spoons are cleanish, and the room smells faintly of leek and ash. There's nothing left to do but wait for sleep. You pull a blanket around your shoulders, a coarse wool thing that's both itchy and irreplaceable. It smells of sheep and memory. The bench creaks as you lean back, letting your spine settle into its familiar ache. Someone murmurs a story about a dream they had, a feast in the clouds, an endless table, pies that refilled themselves, a chicken that laid hot buns. It makes no sense, and no one corrects them. That's the beauty of post-dinner dreams. They're half memory, half hunger, and entirely forgivable. Historians still debate whether peasants had time for storytelling, or if it's a romantic myth. But you know better. Stories are survival. Not just tales of saints and devils, but of stolen pears, lucky rabbit stew that didn't kill you, and dances that nearly broke the floor. And so the room quiets. The fire settles, low embers blinking like tired eyes. You adjust the candle wick, watching it flutter once, then straighten. Its glow lands on the shelf above, where an old wooden spoon rests alone, long cracked, still respected. It's said to have stirred over 1,000 dinners. That may be an exaggeration, but only slightly. Outside, the wind brushes against the thatch. Nothing fierce. Just a reminder that the world goes on while you rest. Inside, your limbs grow heavy, slow. The kind of tired that follows warmth and food and one decent bite of dried apple. You close your eyes for a moment. Just a moment. Dinner may be over, but this moment, this calm, this shared silence, this is the real dessert. You don't remember falling asleep, but now your eyes are open again just slightly, and the fire has shrunk to a dull orange glow. No flame, just warm breath. The hut is wrapped in hush. Outside, the wind has quieted. Even the rats seem to have finished their rounds for the evening. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb the goat or the child curled beside the hearth. Your joints ache a little, nothing unusual. You stretch just enough to feel your shoulders return to where they belong, and you wander over to check that the last candle is done. It is. You pinch the wick, plunging the room into a deeper dark, but it's not a frightening one. Just soft and heavy like dusk tucked inside a blanket. You step outside barefoot on cold soil. The stars above are stitched into the sky like someone embroidered them there with a patient hand. No clouds, no torches, just moonlight, milky and wide. The village is silent. Roofs curve, low fences sag quietly, and somewhere in the distance an owl speaks. A single note, then nothing. You breathe in deep and slow and taste earth, smoke, and bread. You don't need to see it to know. The fields are sleeping too. Tomorrow the sun will rise as it always does. There will be more stew, fewer leaks, maybe no pork. Maybe someone trades for honey. Maybe someone burns the bread. Maybe the goat finally figures out how to open the latch. You return inside and tuck yourself down by the embers. The heat still radiates faintly. The straw beneath you shifts with each breath, creaking like old wood. You pull the blanket close and let your eyes drift once more. Historians still argue what kept medieval peasants going: faith, hunger, fear, stubbornness. You suspect it was something quieter, something like this: the slow joy of enough, the kindness of a warm bowl, a quiet room, and a fire that waits for you. You exhale, and sleep takes you gently. Word count: in neosext. Wind down begins below a proxy. 300 words. And now the fire has faded. The embers sigh beneath the pot that once held barley leeks and a memory of pork. The candle has gone cold. The walls breathe quiet. And the last footsteps have settled into the straw. You feel your body soften, the weight of the day melting into the floor beneath you. The ache in your back, the warmth in your belly, the slow rhythm of your breath, all syncing with the stillness of the room. Outside, the stars hold their places. They've seen thousands of nights like this, thousands of dinners, thousands of dreams. Let them hold you too. Let the last scent of wood smoke carry you. Let the softness of darkness fold around your shoulders like wool. Let the sounds of wind and silence and sleeping goats lull you deeper. There is nothing more to be done. No more root vegetables to scrub. No more stew to stir. Only rest now. Only peace. Only warmth. Sleep like the fields in winter. Sleep like the fire once it knows its work is done. Sleep like a story that has nothing left to prove. Because tonight in 1327 dinner was enough. And so are you. Good night. Because tonight in 1327 dinner was enough. And if this helped you drift off, maybe give the video a like and subscribe for more history that whispers, not shouts. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.